Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're doing something a bit different.
Huh.
Yeah, we're actually going back, way back, to a term paper from 1998.
Wow, okay. 1998.
Exactly. And the topic, well, it's something that's probably on your mind right now, personal privacy. Especially, in our super digital world.
That's fascinating. It really is striking how some worries they just stick around, don't they? I mean, now in 2025, with all the data tracking and everything being so personalized online,
Right.
those early digital privacy concerns, they feel, well, surprisingly relevant.
Totally. And that's really what grabbed me about this specific paper. It's called Choosing to Stay Private in Today's Society.
Mm,
It was written by someone studying computers back when, the internet was still pretty new in most houses.
right, the dial-up days.
Exactly. So it gives this amazing snapshot of the first wave of concerns about tech and our personal lives. So our mission today is to kind of dig into this pre-millennium view and see what insights it might still hold for us now, navigating privacy in the 21st century. What jumped out at you when you first read it?
Well, one of the first things, honestly, was the author saying that this desire for privacy, it seems really fundamental, like really basic to being human.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, they even mention how young kids show it.
Hmm.
Well, wanting their own space, keeping secrets. It suggests it's not just some modern fad, but something much deeper.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. And the paper goes into why that might be, right?
It does. It lays out these core reasons why privacy matters so much.
Yeah.
Not just a nice thing to have, but essential.
Like what?
Well, privacy as a basic right, for one. Also as, like, a shield against harm. And protecting our own personality, our identity.
Okay.
And importantly, the freedom from feeling like you're constantly being watched. These all feel pretty foundational, you know?
Yeah, they really do. But the paper also brings up that complexity, doesn't it?
It does, right away. It
Yeah.
admits that, okay, total privacy, just withdrawing completely, that doesn't really work in society.
Right, because we need each other.
Exactly. We're social beings. We depend on others for, well, everything. Goods, services, emotional connections. So there's always this trade-off.
Mm.
Some information has to be shared for things to function.
Which leads to that sort of weird tension the author mentions, this paradox where we're often really curious about other people's lives.
Yeah, like celebrity gossip or just, neighborhood watch type stuff.
Right. But we get super uncomfortable when the same kind of info about us is out there. They compare it to taxes, remember? Like, nobody loves paying, but we all think everyone else should.
Huh. Yeah, that's a good analogy.
Yeah.
It really highlights that desire for what the paper calls an upper hand.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a strong point. The paper also touches on how sometimes losing some individual privacy is framed as being for the greater good, protecting society from threats.
But with a big warning label attached.
A huge one. It immediately flags how easily that justification can be, well, abused, used to grab too much power. It points to historical stuff, like surveillance in communist states, and even fiction like 1984. It's a really tricky balance. Very easy to get wrong.
Okay, so from that foundation, the paper pivots to the big catalyst technology.
Right, computers.
But it's careful first to say privacy worries didn't start with computers. It mentions the Stasi in East Germany, all those files they kept.
Good context. So, not a new problem, but
But then it highlights how digital computers, becoming so powerful and everywhere, just completely changed the game.
yeah, the scale is what's mind-boggling, even from a 1998 perspective. Computers back then made it possible to gather, store, and, crucially, connect amounts of personal data that were just unthinkable before.
And it wasn't just big government doing it anymore.
Exactly. That's maybe the bigger shift it points out. The technology made data gathering accessible. It democratized it in a way. Lots more people and groups could suddenly do it.
And that ease of access, the author argues, that's a big part of the anxiety.
Definitely.
Yeah.
It brings up those key questions. Okay, who is collecting my data? What are they getting? And what are they actually doing with it? It's that loss of control, the lack of transparency.
Yeah.
But, and this is important, the paper is clear.
Mm-hmm.
The tech itself isn't inherently bad.
Right, it's a tool.
Just a tool,
Right.
like a knife, the example they used.
Huh.
Good uses, bad uses, it depends on the person wielding it. Or like genetic engineering, another analogy in there. Privacy breaches are fundamentally people issues, not tech issues.
So that brings us to the why.
Yeah.
Why are people, organizations, so eager to get this information?
The paper sums it up as wanting that upper hand.
Okay.
And it gives some concrete business examples,
Right.
like keeping people in line,
Mhm.
trying to prevent cheating or fraud.
Oh.
Which Okay, sounds reasonable on the surface.
But
But it immediately raises ethical flags about going too far. Like, why does a credit card company need my detailed medical history? Where's the line?
good question. And then there's targeting people for offers.
Which we see constantly now, right? Targeted ads everywhere.
Everywhere.
The paper framed it as businesses assessing risk, like insurance companies trying to figure out who's likely to cost them more.
And this is where it makes that really striking comparison.
To segregation, yeah.
Yeah.
Questioning the fairness of denying things based on broad categories, demographics, instead of looking at the individual.
It's a powerful point. It really highlights the danger of bias baked into these systems.
Absolutely. And it also stresses the huge information imbalance. We as individuals often have no idea what's being collected, how it's used, who sees it.
Which means we have no real control.
Exactly. And that lack of control isn't just theoretical. It can have major real-world impacts. The paper mentions that wild example of people being wrongly declared dead by computer systems.
Oh, man, yeah. Imagine dealing with that.
Right. Shows how database errors can seriously mess up someone's life.
So, given how fast tech was moving, even then, the paper talks about laws trying to catch up.
Yeah, it mentions Canada's privacy commissioner back in '97, Bruce Phillips, and plans to update the Privacy Act by 2000 to cover the private sector, too.
Which just highlights that classic problem. Technology sprints, law ambles.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And it asks, can public opinion alone really keep data collection in check? The authors seemed a bit skeptical,
Why?
suggesting the temptation, the advantages of having and using that data, might just be too strong for public pressure alone to handle long term.
And relying on government regulation has its own issues, too.
Definitely. Laws get outdated fast. Enforcement can be spotty. And new tech might just find ways around today's rules tomorrow.
So you can't just count on the law to protect you.
Seems to be the message. Which leads to the paper's conclusion on this bit. You need constant vigilance. A kind of paranoia mixed with common sense was the phrase used.
Paranoia mixed with common sense. I like that. Okay, so then it dives into the internet. The information superhighway, as they called it then.
Yeah. Sounds so dated now. But it was the new frontier. And the paper saw the privacy challenges coming.
It's pretty prescient, actually. Even back in '98, it talks about how easy it was, if you had the right software, to just snoop on people online, globally.
And not just snoop, but store and organize everything you found.
And a key point was how invisible it all felt online compared to, say, swiping a credit card in a shop.
Yeah, much less tangible. And the paper specifically mentioned the vulnerability of newbies.
People new to the internet.
Right. Maybe not realizing the digital breadcrumbs they were leaving everywhere, the
Yeah.
potential privacy loss. It makes you wonder, do we still see that today with new platforms, new tech, people jumping in without fully grafting the data side?
I think we absolutely do. You join a new social network, a new app, there's always that learning curve about settings, what's being collected. That initial unawareness seems like a constant.
Mm.
And speaking of early internet annoyances, spam.
Oh, spam. Yes. The paper talks about it being this, shocking intrusion at first.
It almost sounds quaint now, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Thinking of spam as some kind of surprising novelty.
It really does. Shows how fast norms shift online. The paper explained how spammers got emails, from Usenet groups.
Oh, Usenet. Wow.
And how cheap it was to just blast out millions of emails, which is why it stuck around.
And trying to unsubscribe was often useless, right? Sometimes maybe even confirmed your address was active.
Exactly. A real headache and a potential vector for gathering even more info as email addresses started getting linked to real-world data.
But it wasn't all doom and gloom. The paper did mention some early tech trying to protect privacy online.
Right, it gave a couple of examples. There was something called Consumers Connect Email Privacy Service.
Trying to cut down spam for people?
Yeah, though its effectiveness probably depended on people opting in. And then, more significantly, PGP. Pretty good privacy.
For encrypting emails, making them secure.
Exactly. Which, even then, raised those concerns about government being able to conduct investigations. That whole encryption debate, it was already happening.
It's happening today.
Still happening. And the paper also noted, fairly, that these privacy tools often added complexity, compatibility issues, making things harder for the average user. That's another constant theme, isn't it? The usability versus security trade-off.
Definitely. So bringing it all together, the paper wraps up by stressing again how vital privacy is for all those reasons we discussed.
And that it's a shared responsibility. Individuals need to protect themselves, but society also needs to protect its members' privacy.
It also hammers home that laws probably won't ever be the complete answer because tech just moves too fast.
Which puts the onus back on us, the individuals. Being informed, taking steps, knowing what's going on.
And the core message seems to be about choice.
Yes. Ultimately, individuals need to be able to choose their level of privacy, to weigh the risks and benefits of sharing information for themselves. It's about having agency over your own data.
Absolutely. Going back to this 1998 paper, it's really given some valuable perspective on the privacy debates we're still tangled up in today.
It really has. So many of the basic tensions, tech, progress versus individual rights, convenience versus control, they were already there.
They really were. It shows these aren't brand new issues, just maybe older challenges wearing new digital clothes.
Well put. It's the same fundamental concerns, just evolving with the landscape.
So maybe a final thought for you, the listener, to chew on. Thinking about those concerns from 1998, that tech landscape, how does it resonate with you today in 2025? What choices are you consciously making about your privacy right now? And maybe zoom out a bit. What are the bigger ripples of those choices for all of us? Something to think about. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.